And the presenter is Colonel J. Chipili of Zambia. You have the floor.
Distinguished seminar participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I want to thank the government of Sri Lanka for the opportunity to attend such an enlightening seminar, and also to thank the members of Group Charlie for allowing us to stand and present on their behalf. The topic flashed on the screen was the topic under discussion in Group Charlie: climate change, future of warfare. And in the next 20 minutes, we are going to present the salient aspects of what was discussed in the group. And to present with me will be Brigadier Jonathan Beesley from Australia. As part of the introduction, we were agreed to the fact that climate change is a reality. Climate change is happening, and climate change is with us. However, there are different perspectives with regards to climate change from the developing countries' point of view and the developed countries' point of view. And these differences in perspective emanate from the fact that certain countries are able to mitigate the effects of climate change, whilst others may not be able to do so. Climate change is also both a natural process as well as a human-induced process. In saying so, we were agreed to the fact that climate change has been happening for a very long time, although the heightened fight to combat the effects of climate change has been in the 21st century, but it has been happening for a long time. In this discussion, we are going to zero in on the human-induced climate change, which the effects are now being felt. And to do justice to this, we will look at the effects of climate change, both the positive effects as well as the negative effects, and then we'll look at the challenges that are there in addressing the effects of climate change. And then we'll slide into looking at the characteristics of climate change, what it is in relation to warfare, as well as climate change, so what, in trying to propose the way forward. What then are the effects of climate change? Arguably, most people might think there could not be any positive effects of climate change. But we are saying that there could be some positive effects of climate change. And this could be the opening up of new shipping routes as a result of the melting of the glacier, particularly to the regions that are in the polar regions. And that could also consequently open up new areas for arable agriculture. The point to note here would be that such effects would only benefit but very few countries, maybe Russia in this respect. On the other side, there are numerous negative effects, and some of them are the following: urbanization of warfare. Because of the changes in climate, the population that was predominantly in the rural areas have moved to the urban areas, putting a lot of pressure on the social services within the urban areas, and consequently, we are having the fourth generation type of warfare, and warfare now has been urbanized. And in urbanization of warfare, we are looking at using mostly unconventional means of warfare, such as chemicals. Because of the effects of climate change, we also have a scarcity of resources. Most of the populations that were dependent on fishing, for example, or aquaculture, arable farming, and other engagements which depend solely on nature have been forced into abandoning these because the resources have become scarce as a result of the effects of climate change. The push factors that were looked at yesterday and which I have mentioned today have also led to political instabilities because of the pressure that comes with urbanization. In the same vein, we have social instability as well as economic instability, which is emanating from the effects of climate change. The first group was looking at the aspect of migration. Sometimes migration might be due to the effects of climate change. External migration may occur because of the effects of climate change. We also have new forms of conflict, which perhaps some time back were not imagined. There is now a conflict over resources such as water. What are the challenges that climate change poses? In trying to combat climate change, some of the challenges that are there are, firstly, the urbanization. This was looked at into detail yesterday, and most of the governments in developing countries are grappling with the aspect of de-urbanization. How do you entice the population to de-urbanize and go back into predominantly rural areas if those areas are affected by climate change? The other challenge is that in dealing with mitigating climate change effects, the effects of climate change are cross-border. Whilst one nation may be engaged in activities that bring about climate change and its effects, the effects will be felt in the region and in most cases globally. So it requires concerted efforts and unity of purpose in addressing climate change. And in that respect, we are also saying that climate change becomes very difficult to control. We also have different or varying levels of commitment from countries. This is dependent on the vulnerability of the particular country. A country like the Maldives, for example, that is vulnerable, like we heard yesterday, to climate change, may have much more commitment to ensuring that the effects of climate change are reversed than a country that would think that the effects of climate change are remote or akin to it. The differences in perspectives, which I earlier on alluded to, also present a challenge to combating climate change. There is also a difference in the threat models. Climate change poses different types of threats to different countries, and that in itself poses a challenge to combating climate change. What then is climate change?
Thank you. And we'll give the floor to the next speaker now. Also Group C. Brigadier Jonathan Beesley from Australia.
Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, again, thank you for the opportunity to present. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in this fantastic seminar. Following on from the points we heard about the opportunities, the challenges, I would like to now present to you a conclusion of what our group thought these impacts would have on the future nature of warfare. One of the challenges we discussed was whether you consider climate change an enemy or you consider climate change another domain. We lended towards climate change or climactic factors and the future operating climactic environment as a domain alongside land, air, sea, cyber and space, in which you must employ or be capable of employing military capabilities. To do so, and when we did this, the following themes give you a sense of what we concluded. First of all, like operations conducted today, to have a military effect, it cannot be done by the military alone. The military must support or contribute to a whole-of-nation effort to address the effects of climate change. All elements of national power are required to be able to employ military capabilities in this environment. We must ensure we have access to the resources that are essential to the application of those military effects. These resources include fuel, power, water, food. It also extends to the resources that are required to develop future capabilities, whether they be material or non-material. Once we are capable of conducting those operations, we see that there will be a requirement to conduct military operations to secure, access, protect scarce resources. Now, this may include internal military operations. It may include urban operations in the congested, contested and complex battle space. It will include climate intervention operations similar to perhaps those operations that we conduct to protect humanitarian issues through humanitarian intervention operations. We must be reactive to the ever-increasing prevalence of climactic events. This will drive our military capabilities to ensure humanitarian disaster relief capabilities, as well as perhaps the ability to control the population and the movement therein. We must build capabilities in order to sustain ourselves and prepare for climatic environments. We must build resilience in our military capabilities through things such as renewable and/or alternate sources or resources to enable capabilities. If this is the what, we then looked at, so what does this mean? So what? Thank you. That's fine, thank you. Our analysis determined that there were some key unexpected conclusions, and these are contained on this slide. Firstly, as I said before, future wars will not be fought by the military alone. It reinforces a whole-of-nation, joint, interagency, multinational, multi-traditional and non-traditional agencies that perhaps don't exist currently in our organisation. There will be an increased number of actors in the future operating environment. And our partners from the African nations spoke of poachers conducting wildlife terrorism in order to secure resources and also have influence. There will be a requirement for agile legal frameworks to enable military operations, such as climate intervention operations, against other countries perhaps not adhering to climate targets, or those countries who display an inability to secure those scarce resources. As such, we will require multinational regional frameworks to protect shared resources. We spoke of rivers that transit numerous countries within a continent, and the ability or the requirement for each of those countries to meet certain protection requirements to enable those resources to be shared by many regional partners. We must adapt our doctrine, our training, our concepts, as well as equipping our soldiers, sailors, airmen and women to operate in these environments. There will be greater reliance on military effects such as information warfare, perhaps information operations in the space and cyber domain in order to shape the climate environment and protect the climate and also separate ourselves from those climatic conditions. Finally, science and technology, access to alternate sensors, autonomous systems to predict, prepare and develop alternate and renewable resources is what will mitigate this threat. Thank you.